Hey folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day today. My guest today is Kim Nugent, and we're going to be talking about prison reform mentorship. That is something that's really important. I know that as a society, as individuals, we're fascinated with crime, prison, and things like that. But the question is, what happens after the incarcerated are out, or what happens while they're in prison? Well, that's what this prison mentorship is about. But listen up, not only is it about folks who are incarcerated, but this mentorship that we're going to be talking about is really for everyone. We all need some sort of mentorship. So hopefully you get something out of this and you enjoy this podcast. Again, my guest is Kim Nugent. But remember, before we get started, I am a pet lover. And if you are a responsible pet owner, please have your pets spayed or neutered. Thanks.
When I went to school, there was a professor who made a huge difference in my life, and I thought, one day I want to teach. But I wanted to teach something I knew something about. So I was fortunate enough to go back to school, earn my MBA, my doctorate, and I ended up getting an offer part-time to teach for University of Houston. Again, very proud of that opportunity to be able to do that, and I really found my niche. And so I also needed to hone my skill. Even though I loved it, I wasn't very good at it. Honest to goodness truth. So I took every course, everything from public speaking to getting a coach to name whatever that happens to be. But I ended up working my way up in higher education. Honestly, I would have been happy to be a teacher the rest of my life. But when they saw my background in terms of administrative experience, opportunities just presented themselves. I became a dean. I was a director of operations, became a university president, and also then ultimately became the vice president of faculty development for a company outside of Pittsburgh, and was able to make an impact with faculty members to engage our students from the moment they walked into class until they left. And I love that, to be able to kind of do a train the trainer program, honestly, with faculty members. Our faculty members are really excellent in terms of subject matter experts. They're not as great as far as being formally trained inside the classroom. And then ultimately after that, I worked for DeVry University as a president, and then went out on my own. Decided to write a book, and sort of the rest is history. And through that book writing process, a lot of my methodology is really related to mentorship, quite frankly. I believe that mentors are really necessary in today's world. I certainly had the two fantastic, and now three, mentors in my life. Originally at 16, I had a female mentor, which is a little bit unusual in those days if you think about how old I am today. But that woman for 16 years really poured into me. And being a young woman at 16, I needed all the help I could get professionally as well as personally. And she did so much more than just job training. So she really taught me so many things that I really didn't know about how important it is to have a professional library and to continue to learn, and how to really cook, find, things that I wouldn't get at work. And then from there, she did pass on when I was 32. And then as I was in the university, I knew I needed a different kind of mentor. And I was very specific about what I was looking for. And I found a woman, her name was Eileen Crowley Reed. She had worked with our corporation before. And I asked her if she'd be willing to be my mentor. I was scared to ask her that, because to me, she was so amazing. She was well-trained. She spoke multiple languages. She was an attorney at trade. But I watched her navigate relationships with everything, from the janitor to the president or the CEO of our company. And she was just so gracious, and she was so creative and respectful. And I thought, I would like to learn to become that woman. And so that helped me. And then the other thing is that as I was writing, I wrote one of the things at the university that I saw with students in particular, but this could be staff as well, is that people would go for a job and they wouldn't get it, or they would go for a promotion and they wouldn't get it. And then what happens for all of us is when we don't get something we truly want, something happens in our head. And that self-talk is never positive. It's generally negative. And then what I saw next over 30 years of experience is watching first the mindset and then the behavior follow. And the behavior kind of became self-fulfilling. So I think, and I hold not only the employee, but I also hold employers accountable for that. The ideal scenario would be if I'm applying for a position and I don't get it, I want something, right? I want to continue to grow my career. But if I'm not qualified or I don't have quite the skill set or I need to learn something else, I think it's really incumbent upon the employer to actually give me some feedback. How can I grow my career? What is missing so that for that next thing that gets gets posted, that I can be the person who is more qualified then.
Yes.
So, one of the things that I learned last week from someone else I was listening to is she said, don't wait till they post the position. It's too late. Start getting ready now for that position. And I thought that was such great advice, quite frankly. So anyway, I wrote a book specifically to be able to help people find out and uncover their blind spots so they could work on themselves with a mentor. And that was called Promotion Protocol originally. And then what happened is, as I started to see, quite frankly, great things happening in corporations and changing cultures across at least 7 different industries, I thought, I wonder if we could apply that other places. So my next book was really for high school students, for juniors and seniors to figure out what their path was, again, using a mentor. And as I was kind of working through that, I became known in the authorship space or leadership space about mentorship specifically. And I received a call from a gentleman in Arizona who said, hey, Kim, have you ever seen a book about mentorship in prisons? I said, no, I haven't. And he said, would you be willing to write it? He was volunteering for prisons, doing meditation work. And I said, absolutely. And then I hung up the phone, Chuck, and I'll tell you the truth. I hung up the phone and thought, what heck did I say yes to? But it was the best yes that I've ever. And there are moments in time, and I think about this for maybe your audience is, there are times when we say yes to things, and there are times when we say no to things. And what I have found is when I say yes, because it just felt right, you have no idea where your life is going to take you. And if I hadn't said yes back in 2017, my life today would not look the way that it does. And what I mean by that is, from that, it took a lot of research to be able to write my first word, but the book is called From Prison to Possibilities. And what I'm proud of is not the book. What I'm proud of is the work that the men in Mississippi, Florida, and Texas are doing to be able to learn how to become mentors and to be able to mentor small groups and see the transformation because it's shared experiences. There's credibility.
I wanted to ask you something, and it may sound silly, but I wanted to ask you, what is a mentor and what does it mean to be mentored? Because we all hear that word and we say, oh, that means somebody's going to show me something. But really, what is a mentor? What can it be?
Well, the definition has changed today, but I'm going to start with the original definition, really, which is someone who, I think Simon, I can't recall his exact quote, but it's basically someone who walks on the side with you and shows you the way. So they are bringing their experience into something. So one of the things that I think that's important is if you're thinking about having a mentor, and I highly encourage everyone, no matter how you are in your career, wherever you are, I think it's really important to have a mentor. But if you're thinking about what do I want from that mentor? So if you remember what I said a few minutes ago about Eileen Crowley Reed, I was really inspired by this woman. She was the ultimate professional, the way she communicated, the way she interacted, the way she influenced people across the organization. And I thought that is something I need to learn. So when you're thinking about a mentor, whether it's someplace where you work or outside your organization or maybe at your church, wherever it happens to be, if there's someone you truly admire, that might be your mentor. That's number one. Number two, if you're going to ask them to become your mentor, be specific about what you're looking for, but I'd also be complimentary. Here's what I've noticed about you, and I would love to learn how to be able to do that for myself. Now, the possibility is they're going to say no. And if they say no, that's really a gift. And let me tell you why, because that means that they thought about it enough. Either they don't have time to invest in you, or maybe it might not be the right time in their life for a variety of reasons. That doesn't mean you stop. So go and find somebody else. I think that's really, really important. But I think with today's generations, meaning Generation Z and millennials, there is something called peer mentorship. So it doesn't have to be someone older than you. It can be someone else who, again, you want to learn something from. So maybe you're really strong in these areas, but there's some other places where maybe not so strong, or maybe you see that you want to grow your career, whether it's a career lattice horizontal or career, hierarchical, the way traditionally we've done things. That person can help you. But again, being willing to think, what do you want? What's the time commitment? They're going to ask you, how much time do you think this is going to take? What does that look like? And then I think the other thing is, if you're asking someone for someone, you need to come prepared to those meetings, whatever the cadence of those meetings happens to be. But I think there's a variety of things. But what I found is I do evaluate at the end of my program with the men, is that one of the questions I ask them is, have you ever had a mentor before? And over 90% have never had a mentor. And I keep thinking about what I'm missing.
I want to add something or to ask you on this, because you mentioned about time. And if you ask somebody, so this is outside the prison system, if you're just a person and you want to be mentored and you ask someone, it does sound like it would be best for you to say, can you show me, can you teach me, can you mentor me, maybe give me 3 weeks of your time, rather than just leaving it blank slate, because I think sometimes it may scare people off thinking, oh man, they're asking for a 12-month commitment. Would that be something wise to do?
Oh, for sure. I think that, the more specific you can be. Also, but you said something really important, is really when you define whatever that looks like, it's important, because if you just keep it open-ended, you haven't really closed the deal. You've not gotten a commitment from the mentor. So they say yes, and so yes, and means, so, what does your schedule look like over the next 2 weeks? I just love to be able to meet with you for 30 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is. And then once that relationship gets solid, then it could either be more time or less time. But again, maybe it isn't quite as scheduled. They kind of set up some parameters in the very beginning so that they know what they're committing to for both of you.
Okay. Now, when you were doing your research for the folks that were in prison, incarcerated, is there a different way to approach or to do this mentoring?
I think I understand the question, and what I would say is, at the end of the day, we're all human beings.
Okay. Okay, I like that, because I think oftentimes we may think, okay, they are out of society. They are not part of. They're removed, but they are still societal. They're humans, and we all want to be treated the same way. So,
And one of the things that I think is basic to just really connection is the fact that when I go, I completely respect them. 100%. I have no judgment about their crime. I don't ask about those things, quite frankly. That's not what I'm here to do. I am here to show them there's a better way. And what I have found is emerged every single time at every single prison with every single cohort is that these men, and I only work right now with men. I could also work with women, but I'm concentrating on that. And I'm working in maximum security prisons. But one of the things that I think is so interesting is they all have leadership skills. Now, what we do is we take those leadership skills from their past and channel them into a positive direction so that they can impact. That's one thing. The second thing that mentors really tell me often, whether they're serving a life sentence or not, and some I work with do, many do, is so why would you might, as an audience or yourself, even say, well, why would somebody even sign up for a program like this? But the truth is that when they experience this kind of training and they're able to weekly meet with their mentors over a 6 to 9 month period, they have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. They have a purpose. And for all of us, I don't care what generation you are, I don't care who you are, we all need to find our purpose in life. And that is just the most rewarding for me to be able to see that. But also at graduation, we have formal graduations every time. And for the mentors to really be able to share the impact that mentor made. So we have mentors and mentees talking. So mentors really talk about what they really receive from the mentees because they learn as much. And the mentees talk about the impact that mentor has made with them and what they're taking away from that. What I also love is, because they're getting more comfortable in a small group and talking and sharing some real things that are going on, and it's very, each week we have a specific topic. It's a very structured curriculum. So it's not just get together. Like, we really do have a methodology to go through this. But what I'm so inspired by at graduation is part of our graduation is the mentors, 2 of them typically, and 2 mentees will stand up and talk about the program and the impact for them, either with their families, themselves. I can tell you, when we start the program, they're not really speaking out loud. Like, public speaking is scary for everyone. And when they're standing up in front of, quite a few people in that room, and to hear them be able to share out loud, it is unbelievable, the kind of growth and development that they have put in and the effort that they have put in to the program and to themselves.
A couple of things that you're talking about here kind of opens my eyes to people that are incarcerated. And I think one of the biggest things is we might think that all of those people, good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is, but you work in a maximum security, folks, is we think all of them are strong, bold, boisterous, and have this larger than life presence. But like you're saying, a lot of them might be shy is probably not the right word, but maybe soft spoken. So that to me comes as a shock. It's like, wow, I thought they were all, sorry to put this as a general, but I thought they were all loud, bold, and upfront and in your face because of the position that they're in.
So it's an interesting thought. Maybe the way I might say is maybe the audience or yourself is thinking about bravado, right? But let me put it in context. Let's pretend for a moment that you, myself, anyone else has been charged and we've been sentenced to however long we've been sentenced. So now we get processed through the system, and now we've been a transport vehicle has taken us from court, and now we're going to go to prison. And so we're being processed through that system. And now all of a sudden, literally, you can hear the gate close. And in that moment, you realize life how it was is not how life is going to be.
Right.
And for every single person, I don't care who you've done, what you've done, where you've been, or anything else, there is definitely, I'm going to say, a fear factor. Like, I don't know how to navigate this. I don't know what's going to happen to me. What is going to happen to my family? How, all of those things are going through. It's a lot. It's just a lot.
Well, yeah, I can imagine it takes away your sense of purpose. The door on the other side is closed. I've lost, whatever purpose I had prior to doing whatever it was that landed me in jail, in prison. So I can see and understand now what you're saying about that as far as, the respect. We got to respect that everyone deserves respect. And that, I think, will build the confidence.
Well, I think everyone deserves a second chance.
Yes.
Certainly if we all think about ourselves, somebody in our life somewhere gave us a second chance. It might have been a little thing. Maybe we made a mistake at work and somebody else kind of mentored you through, hey, you might want to handle it this way next time, or whatever it happens to be. But I think there's an interesting statistic, if it's true, and I think about this often. So I went to a conference and the woman was talking about mental health and brains and things like that. And one of the things that she said was the male brain actually matures at the age of 35. I thought that was a really interesting statistic. And it depends on, the research and everything else. But let's say that that's true. So think about, and things are happening younger and younger every single day. So you're a young man or young boy at 11, and then from, say, 11 until 35. All the things that can happen to you, all the places you are, all the decisions that you have to make. And I think about wrong place, wrong time, wrong moment. Any moment, something bad can happen, and you could end up behind bars.
Mm-hmm.
And so where I see a lot of transformation happening, quite frankly, is in one of two ways, either after the age of 35 in prison, or some kind of spiritual transformation when they realize that what they have been doing no longer serves them. And for some people, it's been all about me, me, me. I never thought about anybody else, and they realize that they're missing out on so many things, relationships with family, like today, and they don't want that anymore. They want to stop that cycle, and they also really want to make sure that their kids don't come to prison.
Yes. Whether it's true in the movies or not, that's what you always hear folks that are incarcerated say, I don't want my child to end up where I'm at.
Yes, and that's a great thing to say, right? But the reality is what the research actually says. We don't have real stats, but it says a child who has a parent in prison is 6 times more likely to go to prison. Now, fortunately, and I do mean fortunately, is that there are national organizations that really can help children kind of navigate that. That's got to be hard on so many levels. You have a missing parent, so you don't have the presence of, in this particular case, a father to be able to shape and guide you. But a lot of people don't know those organizations exist.
Yeah. I want to throw this in real quick for people who are listening or watching, is that they can go to your website, drnugentspeaks.com, and you do have quite a bit of information there. So I would suggest and ask people to go visit your website and take a look around, whether it be out of curiosity or if you know somebody that's incarcerated, they could reach out to you, find out some more information.
100%.
And I would imagine that this is good for anyone, whether they want to be mentored or they want to be a mentor.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is that, until or I'll say about myself, so I never know. Every single facility is different. The group of men are different. The aha moments are different and everything else. But what has been pretty consistent is as they're learning new things week by week, and the discussion topics are things like attitude and behavior and communication, emotional intelligence, integrity. I could go on. We have 26 topics. but on the other hand, so when they learn something, the best way to really keep that information is to teach it, or at least have a conversation around it outside of the small group. So what the men will do often is when they're calling home, they will have a conversation about what they're learning with their spouse or their child or whoever it happens to be. And it's starting to shift that family dynamic.
Mm. It's one of those things, I guess, if you repeat it, you're going to learn it, you're going to know it. So that is all the same thing if you're having them talk about it. Or I would imagine that a program such as your program gets them motivated, again, gives them a sense of purpose. And I believe that we all want to share, whatever it is, we want to share it. And that gives you pride.
Absolutely, and again, every facility is a little different. In the very first facility I started in, they had limited programming when we first started. Now, depending on the prison and depending on maybe I should say resources are available. They had a few programs, but people weren't really signing up. For some crazy reason, after this program, they started signing up GED, community college credits, certifications, things like that. That's amazing to me. Another facility was so interested in continuing to develop their skill set. What they wanted to do specifically is they wanted to get additional books and go deeper into every one of these topics. That was another possibility. Another facility said, you know what, we love this. We want to really develop ourselves, could we have a place in, they have a law library, but could we have a place in the library where we could just set a self-development area to be able to continue to expand and grow while we're here? We want to make the best of ourselves we possibly can, so when we leave, we can go and lead our family and break this cycle. So it's been really rewarding to see that it's not just this and the learning ends. The other thing that I think is important is that when we complete a cohort and they graduate somewhere around 9 months, those mentors, I really wanted to have them understand how much I really appreciated the effort. And I just didn't want to say, okay, your job is over. So what we offer, or what I offer them, is the opportunity to spend more time with me to learn more coaching skills, not to be a coach, but to really learn more coaching skills. And they can be more support to administration and the new mentors that are coming in, because they've already gone through the pathway. And one, we're repetition, like you said. So I got through it the first time, now the second time. And they can also anticipate maybe where some of the difficult conversations are going to happen week to week, and they can help the mentors even do a better job. Then ultimately where I'm going with all of this is I never believe it's my program, just so you know, it's their program. It's going to be their experiences and what they think is important that they've read from the article. So each week they read about a page-and-a-half article that I've written. They have a set of questions that the mentee answers, and then a set of questions for the mentor. So it's very structured. And they can do whatever they want with it inside of that. So if they want to bring in their experience, that's great. If they want to talk about, if they want to ask questions, that's great, whatever it happens to be. But what's interesting, after they become a mentor and they complete, they can also get coaching skills. And again, that's another level. This is the next time around. And if I see the desire of someone who says, you know what, I really want to take this to the next level, and I want to be you, Kim, I'm all about that. So I want to give the program away. So this has actually happened once, but I can see I've already, I have my eye on a few people right now in separate facilities to be able to ask them specifically, would you like to be the facilitator of this program? And that's when I know that it's owned at the facility and it's no longer me and I can get out of the way. So my Train the Trainer program, basically, I have several, but the one specifically around Prison of Possibilities is basically a 2-day program.
Okay.
So, and here's why I think it has to be face-to-face, because I'm building a relationship with people I have never met, and they're building a relationship with me. And there's a whole lot of trust that has to go on, just number one. Number two, even though they've signed up to become a mentor, and I'm training mentors, I'm not doing mentees. And during this time, I tell them on day one that I'm just so glad that you're here. You know, you're going to learn a lot over the next 2 days, but I am going to come to you at the end of day 2 and ask you if this is something you want to do. And your answer is going to be one of two answers. It's either a yes or it's a no. And let me tell you what that means. I can't have maybes, because these guys are counting on you, and I can't have you decide a couple weeks in, I don't want to do this. And I'm clear that if you're yes, thank you so much. If you're no, we part friends. Thank you for being with me. No hard feelings. I hope you learned something from the experience, and that's it. And that is really critical. When somebody makes a commitment to this program, they're making a commitment, and they're not making it to me. I bring the warden in, and they have to go up and stand before the warden, make the verbal commitment, shake the warden's hand, and we're off and running. And I think that's really important, because today I think we're a little wishy-washy no matter who we are. Forget prison. You know, sometimes we'll say something like, if you say to me, hey, Kim, would you like to do, da-da-da-da-da, and I say maybe, that's not an answer.
Right.
That's postponing something else, right? And so, this is kind of the first lesson in when I say something, I mean something. And there's no drama attached to it either way. It's clean. Either it's a yes or it's a no. The other thing is so then that's the first part. So it's the relationship for me with the inmates. Then how do I manage this is that every single week I have a touch-based meeting with the programming warden assistant warden, who's ever accountable for being oversight on ground. And I check in with them to make sure how it went the last week, what are we doing this week to set them up. And I do that the entire period of time because it helps them and it helps me understand what's happening on the ground. And then I come back again a second time for graduation.
Okay. Going back to the reasons behind why you need to be there, especially right up front in person, that there is a huge difference. I mean, we're not in the same room right now, but we're having a conversation. But it is totally a different feel and different conversation when I have somebody live in the studio versus this. It just seems like it's easier to ask a question. It's easier to jump in and have that normal type of conversation rather than the I talk, I wait, you go, you talk, I wait. It's just a different relationship building. And I would imagine that for the prison system, that you need that, as you said, that touch, that experience of being there and knowing. And it is so much easier for me to be at a distance and go, well, I'm not really sure. Whereas if we were really up front facing each other, I think it would be easier for me to say, no, this is not for me. Not everybody could do it that way, but I think it's easier to look the person in the eye in person and give that honest truth.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I think, what you said is really, really important.
Let's remind the folks again about your book, and your book is called From Prison to Possibilities, Paving Your Path. So we want to make sure that folks go to your website again at drnugentspeaks.com. I almost said your name, Kim Nugent, but it's just drnugentspeaks.com. And I've got it on my other screen in the background. Got a couple of different monitors, but it's well worth visiting. And hopefully that there's somebody who is in the prison system right now, not in the prison system, but works for, that's watching this and can find some value and possibly bring it to the warden or whoever might need to look at this.
I hope so too. The one thing I want to circle back and close off the last question that you asked me related to, whether I could do this virtually. The truth of the matter is it's still prison. So inmates do not have access to the internet, just so you know. Okay, so we need to start there. Now, have things changed since COVID? Absolutely, 100%. So a couple of things that are different about prisons today is that our wardens are leaders have internet access for business, right? For their meetings or things like that. That's a huge change from prior to COVID. That wasn't happening. Also, inmates have access to tablets depending on the state, but they are not connected to the internet. So it is preloaded information, but it's static. So even if I wanted to do the program on a tablet, currently, the way the technology works, it really wouldn't work. I wouldn't get the interaction like you and I are having today, the back and forth and everything else. And that's really where I think the magic happens because, depending on how you ask me a question or how I answer a question, we're building that relationship over time. But there's nothing better for me. And I teach virtually. I teach, outside of the prison environment. I teach virtually, I teach face-to-face, I teach hybrid. My favorite is face-to-face. As a student, I like, virtually, truthfully, but on the other hand, I do a lot of activities. I am not the lecturer in class. The only way you're going to become a mentor is to practice. So we do one-on-one, we do small group, we do all kinds of things to be able to manage. How am I really going to be able to do this? Have 4 people in my group, ask questions, be present, take notes, ask probing questions, all of that. That takes some time.
Well, I'm going to say thank you for clarifying on that. I wasn't sure. I was thinking in my mind, okay, the mentor, the leader is going to go into a room and they can connect with you through the internet, which no.
Not currently. I mean, obviously the restrictions, being what they are, as they should be, yes. Quite frankly. I am not advocating for anything else. So we work within the parameters that we have. Who knows what the future could look like.
Okay. This has all been really fascinating, but, before we jump off, I just want to ask you a little bit about mentorship, mentoring in the general public, and maybe dial it back to folks, people that are under the age of 20, maybe just getting out of high school, maybe just the thought of going into a university, or maybe they finish university, but the younger kids, because there's so much happening right now. And it just doesn't seem like, and I think you said this earlier, that mentoring seems like it is a luxury, because nobody is seeking to be mentored for some reason. At least that's what I see, is people are not asking to be mentored.
I don't know it's on their radar, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
I say that maybe it's unconscious, or I'm not sure. They may not know how.
Okay.
That would be one thing. I would say the other thing is that maybe they just think, maybe they should. I mean, definitely millennials and Gen Zs are looking to their parents today more than ever before. They really enjoy that relationship, and maybe they're thinking they don't. But there are so many things that you need. So having it, for example, let's just say that you're junior or senior in high school and you're thinking about what's next. And that could be a variety of things for people. Doesn't necessarily have to be college, right? It can be military, it can be opening their own business, it could be community college, vocational, all of those things. And you make a great living vocationally, so would never stop thinking about that. But again, so then thinking about, well, I don't know everything there is to know about that. I wonder out there, and quite frankly, something as simple as I wonder who my parents know, or a teacher I know that I respect. They might know somebody. Maybe they could help me find that mentor. That would be one thing. And I think that would be really helpful. What I have found is early on, well, in between all of this, I was mentoring a lot of high school students. And generally those requests come from parents. Of course they would. And so, which is fine. But what I've noticed, though, is I listen to high school students differently than mom and dad. Mm-hmm. I listen to them like they're young adults. I don't have, that emotional connection. I can be very objective, and I respect what they're saying. I help them navigate maybe how to say it differently so they can get a better result. But on the other hand, it doesn't work when a parent is mentoring their child. That relationship is just too complicated, and I think it's really helpful. I think the other thing is the next really key time would be, whether you're in college or whatever path you've decided, now you're going to need a different mentor because you're in it. So who can I look to be able to see that? But I do a lot of research on retention data, because if you take a look at our workforce today, it's complex, number one. Also, COVID gave everyone in the United States, or probably all over the world, quite frankly, to kind of reset and think about, what is it that I really want to be doing? Do I still want to continue what I've been doing, or do I want to do something? And people sort of woke up and said, you know what? I want to make a difference. I want to work with purpose. Maybe it's still where I'm working. Maybe it's not. So that's one thing that I think we all have in common is, what is my purpose? And for some people, it takes a little longer to find it. That's where a mentor can come in to play. The next thing, though, is for millennials and Gen Zs, and they're different. They're not the same generation, so we can't manage that or lead them the same way. But they are very much interested in growth and development. They're young in their careers. And so what's available to me? Do you have classes or certification? Do you have education reimbursement? Those things are important. And as the employee, sometimes you don't know those things. And sometimes HR assumes we have so many great resources and they know, but they don't. The third thing that they really want is coaching and mentoring. And it is no longer a wish. It's actually a demand. Because if I don't get that now, I'm going to find an organization that will offer that to me because I'm young in my career and I don't want to make as many mistakes. I'm going to make my own, but I don't want to make as many mistakes. I want to help somebody be with me. And then the third is what the research would say is recognition, but I like to change that word to appreciation. Recognition is a task. I can recognize you for something you did. But appreciation is creating a culture where you feel like you're truly appreciated, that you matter. And I think that is a big deal. And so being able to do that, I don't know of anybody who's ever left an organization because, oh my goodness, they appreciate me too much and they're so positive, I must leave. It's the opposite of that, actually. So again, thinking differently about particularly baby boomers and Gen Xers is that how they grew up is not how these next two generations want to be led.
If I understood you correctly, there's one thing that I want to repeat, and I like that you said it. Again, if I understood it correctly, your parent should not be your mentor, at least
Right.
because of that different dynamic and relationship. And that to me is very important, where I think I do believe that a lot of parents think that they are mentoring their children, but it's just that different dynamic. It's not, it just doesn't work right.
Well, I'll give you a really good example that I think everybody in your audience can relate to. Let's say that you tell somebody, doesn't matter if it's a friend, a relative, whoever, something, and it is really awesome advice. And you're so tickled that you poured into this person and said that. And they don't do anything with that information. But then their other friend over here says the same thing you said. This works in every kind of example you can think of. And they're like, oh my gosh. And they come back and tell you, Chuck, do you know what Fred said? He said this and this and this, and it's exactly what you said. But the listening was different. That's exactly why a parent cannot be a mentor.
That is a good way of putting it. And you're so absolutely right with that analogy. Kim, this has been great. And I know we could talk forever about mentoring, and especially you with all your skills and experience. But I think this gives a good place for people to understand your book, what they can expect. And also, I hope the takeaway for the people who are just listening and watching that, ask for help, ask for that mentorship. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can always, I think, learn something from someone and seek for that outside. I say seek for that outside help, meaning don't ask your mom or dad or maybe your best friend, but seek for somebody who's got the skill that you want to learn and ask them to be your mentor. And be specific and give those timelines. Hey, my apologies on the audio. I know it sounded good in some parts and not so good in the other parts, so I hope you were able to bear with this on that technical difficulty. But aside from that, I hope you gain some knowledge and some reasoning behind why mentorship is important, not only for the prison reform or for the incarcerated, but for all of us in general. Ask for that help, like I said at the end, and be straightforward and honest. What is it that you want? Give a timeline. So that's it, folks. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching, listening to the podcast. If you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and comment. It really does help. So if you're looking for more, keep following. Until next time, thanks, and go ask for some mentorship or mentor someone. So long.